It's Charter California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance, and we are joined by Mike Gardner. He is a member of the Riverside City Council, but he also serves as chair of California's Seismic Safety Commission. And I know, sir, recently you attended a symposium looking back at the 20th anniversary of the Northridge earthquake.
Yes.
I must tell you, 20 years ago, I was living in Encino on a street called Zelza Avenue. If I drove 5 miles down Zelza, I would have been in Northridge where the buildings collapsed.
Yes.
And we know those famous pictures. So I was right there.
I was in Riverside.
And how was it for you?
It definitely woke me up. You could tell that because of the rolling motion,
Right.
it was less sharp out here, that it was a substantial earthquake at some distance.
Right.
And I was promptly turned on the radio and the television and started getting reports and realized how serious it was.
What's interesting about this anniversary is it comes on the heels of some information that's been released through Los Angeles Times reporting, through the efforts of Senator Ted Lieu and others, that the state has arguably been derelict in mapping faults. And there's been some attention paid, for example, to the Hollywood area.
Yes.
What have you learned on this front?
Well, I wouldn't say the state was derelict. There are only so many dollars to be budgeted,
Sure.
and a conscious choice was made to allocate dollars for different things, and it's fair to argue about whether the priorities were correct or not.
What I've learned, and LA Times tells us, is that in 2001, the state's geologist budget was at 9.1 million, and then it dropped to 2.9 million in this fiscal year. So, query whether we should be spending more money. Should we?
I think it is important that we get accurate mapping of faults. We keep finding faults we didn't know about because you get a substantial movement on them. The Whittier quake was on a fault that nobody knew was there.
What's interesting is, and I want to focus on Hollywood if I may, what we know is Hollywood has gone through a renaissance.
Yes.
We know that. It is not the Hollywood of the 80s where no one would visit it. And the region is much more attractive now, and it's been gentrified. And so there's been a lot of move to have people move into Hollywood. And so there are 3 major projects being proposed. As I understand it, the LA City Council has approved those projects, but yet those projects purportedly are 0.3, 0.4, and 0.5 miles from a fault. And these are skyscrapers. I don't know, sir. That sounds a little troubling to me.
I think it's reasonable to have some concerns about that. I believe that the City Council's approval is more at the conceptual level, and they still have to go through design review, which is when you would look at that level of detail.
But this begs the question. I mean, is the excitement about the revitalization of Hollywood so great that folks are not recognizing the need to slow down for a second? And I ask you as the chair of the California Seismic Safety Commission to really wait to make sure that these buildings are not built on faults or 0.3 miles from faults.
Yeah. I think from a policy perspective, it makes a great deal of sense to be careful about approving projects like that, especially now that the information on the fault is coming out. It's only a fairly recently discovered fault.
Right. But that also then begs the question, what should we do in terms of our commitment toward earthquake mapping funding? We know that the governor has proposed increasing funding in this fiscal year. We are in surplus, so that's easy to do. But are we doing enough? And when we think about what happened with the Fukushima earthquake, and that was while we were cutting our funding in the last decade. The Fukushima earthquake, of course, being in Japan. And you know well about it, of course, as a councilman in Riverside, where one of the most impacted cities was Sendai.
Yes, our sister city.
A sister city. So talk to me about it.
Well, I do think that it is important, and the governor is recognized and is allocating funding, to complete the mapping effort that was proposed many, many years ago. And the faster it can be done, the safer we will be from the potential of impact from a major seismic event. One of the issues you face is seismic events are low probability at any given time
Right.
with very high consequences.
Extremely well stated. And the governor has said that we will face a catastrophic earthquake. And I know he's not a seismologist, but that's just...
I don't think there's any question that we will, whether it's in my lifetime
Right.
or your lifetime.
Right.
No one knows.
Right. And some have argued we're due for one.
More than.
Right.
If you take the average movement time frame on some of the major
Right.
faults, we are well overdue on the southern San Andreas.
And that is where exactly, sir, the southern San Andreas?
The southern San Andreas comes up through the Imperial Valley and Palm
Okay.
Springs area, and then through the San Bernardino Valley, and on north up through San Francisco.
So let's talk about that, because there's been a lot of attention paid to this question about Hollywood, because it's Hollywood.
Right.
And so when you have budgets that are limited, yeah, we're going to focus on Hollywood. It's an urban center, it's an attractive place, it brings in business. But what about these smaller areas where, even though the actual fault may be in a rural zone, the impact could be as dramatic as if it landed right in the middle of Hollywood?
It can indeed, especially for the larger faults that have the capability of generating a magnitude
Right.
7.5 and
Exactly.
up into the 8s. That will have a significant effect across a very large region.
And today we are in the Inland Empire in Riverside, California,
Yes.
so not, I would presume, far from the southern San Andreas Fault.
We are close to the San Andreas Fault. We are also close to several other significant ones that kind of parallel the San Andreas Fault.
So are these, I'll call them outer regions, no pejorative
Right.
intended, are they getting the attention they deserve vis-a-vis what's happening with the desire to increase earthquake mapping?
I think that inland Southern California will get the attention. It's not there this fiscal year, but I
Right.
think in succeeding fiscal years it will be for a number of reasons. The risk is fairly high,
Right.
and the probability may be a little higher because of the length of time it has been since there's been a major movement on some of the big faults.
So what is the Seismic Safety Commission doing on this front? I guess you're busy now. I mean, anniversaries can do that.
Right.
It gets people thinking.
It does.
And so, and it's kind of a perfect storm here, because you have the anniversary and then this LA Times coverage,
Right.
which has
Well,
gotten a lot of heat.
The commission is supportive of mapping efforts. It doesn't actually do mapping itself.
Right.
There's another department that does
Right.
that for the state, but the commission agrees that having the mapping done is of significant importance. Another thing that the commission is looking at, particularly in the anniversary of
Right.
Northridge, is there are 3 building types that are at greater risk than originally thought of failure in very strong ground motion. There's non-ductile concrete buildings, which are concrete buildings that don't have enough steel in them. There are the soft story buildings like the ones you mentioned with parking below
Exactly.
that just drop down a floor. And then there are some steel frame buildings where the welds and bolting of the steel structure aren't as strong as were originally thought.
I'm reminded, I was in Taiwan a couple of years ago, and I was in Taipei, and they have, it's now the second largest building in the world, Taipei 101. And part of the visit included viewing the earthquake safety apparatus. It was stunning to see what they had done. The building, you've heard this, would not crumble, it would sway. I mean, literally.
That's the plan.
And that's the goal.
Yes.
So,
As it would be, I believe, for these buildings in Hollywood that you mentioned earlier. As they get into actual design and construction, there are isolating mechanisms that will reduce the transfer of the ground motion into the building itself.
okay, so his name is Mike Gardner. He is a member of the Riverside City Council. He also chairs the California Seismic Safety Commission. My name is Brad Pomerance. This is Charter California Edition.
The strongest earthquake to strike the United States in recorded history hit what level on the Richter scale? 9.0, 9.2, 9.5, or 9.9? The largest recorded earthquake in the United States was a magnitude 9.2 that struck Prince William Sound, Alaska on March 28, 1964.
Welcome to Charter California Edition. My name is Brad Pomerance, and we are joined by Steve Adams. He is a member of the Riverside City Council. He is also a candidate for the United States Congress for a district that is centered in Riverside. It includes Riverside, Moreno Valley, Paris, and
Jurupa Valley,
and
Edgemont.
It's a tight district geographically, really tight. I mean, still the same number as any other district, but geographically tight. So you've been campaigning, sir, for a little while now.
Yes.
I want to get a sense, what are your constituents, the voters of this district, saying? What are their issues?
Their number one issue right now is jobs and the economy. One affects the other. We've, in Riverside, one of our big industries, or two of our big industries, were house building and agriculture. Both are cyclical and both are on a down cycle right now.
And let's be specific, if we may, because we know that if we were talking 5 years ago, 4 years ago, and we talked about housing and the economy, I mean, just to keep ourselves from not crying would have been difficult because this region was so severely impacted by the downturn. But I do feel as if, and tell me if you agree, that the Inland Empire has turned a corner. It does feel like things are better.
We absolutely have. And Riverside, the city of, is the capital city for Riverside County. And we went through the Renaissance, where we spent $1.8 billion completely renovating the city of Riverside and redirecting our direction for the future.
And during the downturn.
Yes.
Which was really fortuitous. Simply the money had been set aside before the downturn. So during the downturn, you're spending money on the Renaissance. And I do think it's fair to say that the city of Riverside actually fared a bit better than the entire county and region during the downturn.
We did. We got an early jump on the issues. We were able to downsize through attrition the size of the city.
The government side,
and about 26%, yet we were 47% more efficient. We didn't have to cut any services. In fact, we got better at providing the services. And that's what you can do when you downsize government and capture some of the waste and efficiencies that are out there.
And at the same time as the Renaissance is marching forward, UCR was on the verge of opening a medical school, which it now has.
Right. That was 9 years ago, 10 years ago, when we started vying for it. We the city of Riverside, so we have to change the industry here. So we have a full-time, high-paying, high-tech industry that has no season, doesn't cycle. It's 24/7, 365, year after year. And bring in those high-paying jobs. We have 3 amazing universities. We have a great
UCR,
community college system.
La Sierra.
So we have the highest trained technology people. We have mid-range people, and then we have entry-level people. You need all of those, but we needed to bring a new industry to Riverside, and technology was it. And we went after bringing a medical school for 2 reasons. One, for the jobs and what it would do, and the other is this area was in serious need of more doctors. And the tradition is that where you go to medical school, where you do your internship, usually you stay. And we had to make Riverside competitive with LA County, with Orange County, and with San Diego counties as quality of life. A place to bring your business, a place to keep your business, a place for your family to grow up. And we've done that, and we're going to continue to be competitive. It costs less to do business here.
It does.
And we still have the same quality of life. And the people in our region are looking for quality, high-paying jobs, because that creates the other.
And so with UCR Med opening, like you said, should bring more jobs in a variety of fields. I understand, I think it was former Chancellor Tim White mentioned to me that for every doctor that sets up shop, there's $1 million impact on the region yearly.
Exactly.
So that's a very significant fact. Speaking of medical, I want to speak with you about the Affordable Care Act. Because there is no doubt it continues to be on the minds of Californians, of those in the Inland Empire. I think it's fair to say that Covered California had an easier time rolling out than healthcare.gov. I'm sure you would likely agree. But as you go around and speak with constituents, voters, what are you hearing? And please, give us a real sense of what they're saying.
I've talked to my constituents, friends and family, and people throughout the city and the region, also doctors and nurses and medical employment. Augment people to get their opinion on it. Most of the people are afraid of what's going to happen and what is happening. In other words, they are insured now. They like their insurance, But if they change, if you're a small business or if you're an individual, whatever the situation is, if you change your medical coverage, it's going to cost more, and it does. It's been
And
almost
let's-
double now.
let's talk about-
And then that deductible, and that's the hidden problem there.
Let's talk about keep your plan.
Right.
Because look, healthcare.gov, it's already getting better. By the time your election rolls around, it probably won't be as significant an issue, the glitches with healthcare.gov. The keep your plan though, that's a trickier one. I mean,
Right.
President Obama said countless times, if you like your plan, you can keep it.
Right.
It wound up, he should have had an asterisk at the end of that statement. Because while it may be wise policy to get people out of these junk plans, which is what the Affordable Care Act is trying to do, President Obama said, if you like your plan, you can keep it. Even if it may be wise policy that you don't have that plan. That's what he said.
But I challenge the term junk plans. A plan for me does not include maternity. All right, so you can't call that
So,
a junk plan. It
touche,
covers
yeah.
it covers all those needs that I have as an individual,
Right.
and I as an individual should be able to decide what coverage I pay for and what coverage I need. I used to sell medical
Oh, is
plans.
that true? Okay.
Yeah, I'm an insurance
Okay.
broker and a stockbroker
Okay.
by trade.
Okay.
And so that's you formalize and form your health coverage around the needs of the people who are going. Now we have to take all of these different categories in, which cost you more.
Right.
And it's whether you need it or not, you're getting it, you're paying for it. But also, it has put a burden on the medical system. And they said we see fewer people going to the emergency room. Now we're seeing more people going exponentially. Because if you're a senior citizen right now, and you've had to change your medical, and you went to Medicare or whatever,
Right.
and you have the flu, and you call your doctor and you can't get in for 3 weeks, and that's the average time right now, what happens to a senior or somebody in poor health that they have to wait 3 weeks before they can see a doctor with could be fatal flu symptoms? They have to go to the emergency room.
But
And that's where we're seeing more and more people show up, and the doctors will verify that. The stats at the emergency room will verify that.
But I want to go back to this keep your plan, because I really do feel as if that is a sticking point for so many people.
Absolutely.
Even supporters of the Affordable Care Act are nervous about that very issue. And what was most interesting as well is that President Obama asked the states to allow, at least for 1 year, individuals to keep their plan if they so desire, but covered California declined because Obama could not tell the states to extend for that 1 year. Insurance Commissioner Dave Jones, a Democrat, came out and said, covered California, you're wrong. You should have allowed these people to keep your plan for a year. But Covered California said no. So has that been a source of frustration as you've walked around
Yes.
this district, that people, even if they're junk plans or not, whatever you want to call them, please.
Well, yes, it is a concern, and it is frustrating, because even the few that have been able to get on and get, or what they think is insurance, they still haven't been able to get verified that their insurance is active.
We've heard that.
And this is another major
Right,
problem.
I mean, we have heard Blue Cross, Blue Shield, they've had to apologize. I mean, aside from Cover California's website or healthcare.gov, query whether these insurance company bureaucracies are up to snuff, and there's been some challenges for them. I mean, this is a huge change, and these insurance companies are just, they're struggling.
And many doctors are opting out of many of these policies. And this is, I met with a group of doctors,
Please.
and what they said was, we're now through Obamacare, and the remunification they
Right.
get from the government is 33% of what they were making.
Well, we know
and,
that-
And the answer when they went to the government to say, we can't operate on that, and they said, do 66% more patients and you'll break even.
Well, we know
that
that
doesn't happen.
that California has the lowest Medicaid reimbursement in the nation, 50th out of 50. That's a California challenge.
And so many of these doctors are opting out.
Right.
And
No,
so
I've
we're
heard
not going
that.
to take those
I've heard
patients,
that.
which puts that bigger burden on the emergency room and urgent care, our ambulance and emergency services, our fire departments responding to more health care issues than they are accidents and injuries.
His name is Steve Adams. He is a member of the Riverside City Council. He is a candidate for the U.S. Congress. My name is Brad Pomerance. This is Charter California Edition.
What percentage of enrollees in Covered California have been deemed eligible for a subsidy under the Affordable Care Act? 50, 65, 77, or 85%? About 85% of people signing up for coverage through Covered California are eligible for a government subsidy that lowers premium costs.
Welcome back to Charter California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. We are joined by Janet Franco. She is the founder of the Global Transformation Network. I came to her through a Riverside council member, and the work she is doing to benefit the veterans of this region is nothing less than inspiring. I hearken back to the recent State of the Union address. And what was most remarkable to me, Janet, is the amount of applause that was given to Corey Remsburg. He, of course, was the young man who President Obama had met before his injury and then reconnected with him after his injury. You could see he was struggling, but on the other side, he's doing better. But a lot of folks with traumatic brain injury are not.
Yes.
Talk to us about your journey.
Well, actually, Brad, thank you, first of all, for the interview.
Please.
It's great. We are in a state of emergency, I would say, in this nation, with losing between 22 and 25 soldiers a day and veterans a day due to suicide. Suicide. I mean, that's beyond. That's just suicide.
That's just it breaks my heart.
And you know,
it's
and the biggest thing that we don't, with the State of the Union address, with what President Obama did, that was great. It's amazing.
Right.
But most TBI victims, you can't tell they have TBI. You can't tell they have traumatic brain injury by looking at them.
I have to tell you, I interviewed a veteran maybe a couple years ago, and he had a minor TBI, as you call it, but severe mental illness as a result. If you looked at him, he was the jock from next door.
That's right. That's right.
He was completely unglued.
Well, it's interesting. They're called hot buttons, if you will. I've been working with this for 5 years now, and with a son that fell out a window when he was 3 years old.
Right, and got a TBI.
Yes, he had TBI and a traumatic brain injury. He had PTSD, post-traumatic stress, which they like to call it now, by the way, post-traumatic stress now.
Okay.
And going through that with Sean, it taught me, Brad, about the brain and why they do certain things and what triggers them. And it took us nearly 10 years to get Sean back. And I'm so proud to say that in 2001, he won the Junior College Baseball World Series in Las Vegas.
And it's interesting you mention that he's an athlete, because what you've learned in your research is that there's a lot of correlation between TBI in the military and TBI in sport. Often football.
Well, you hear, you see it all over the news. And in fact, the organization, the Capstone Treat Now Coalition, which I'm a part of now, is an amazing movement to wake up America to this unbelievable problem.
And I understand one of your biggest fears is that TBI will become a stepchild similar to Agent Orange.
Yes, and we can't do that.
And your goal is to make sure that doesn't happen.
Yes.
We know the Veterans Administration is backlogged. They're working to clear the backlog. But what's most interesting, and why I was really compelled to have you on the program after hearing from the Riverside Councilmember's office, is you believe that there is a treatment that could be utilized for TBI and or PTSD and or just general mental challenges.
Yes, that's a really good point, Brad. There's a difference between TBI, traumatic brain injury, and PTSD.
Yes.
Traumatic brain injury is a traumatic, something that happened to the brain.
Right.
Now with hyperbaric oxygen therapy is now becoming the buzzword.
So let's stop for a second and back up. Tell me exactly. I think I know what hyperbaric oxygen treatment is.
Well, they use it in the Navy. They've been using it for years.
But paint a picture for us. What is it?
So hyperbaric oxygen therapy is a treatment that our soldiers and veterans can now go through. That is about a 40-hour process.
Okay.
So they're
not at one moment, I presume.
No, they're split up in segments where they spend time in this chamber. And what happens is the forced oxygen to the brain causes new capillaries to grow. It causes life to come back to the brain. So we're seeing immediate response within the swelling of traumatic brain injury. And we have so many videos that we have now that people can go to our website and go to the coalition's website through our website and see the actual results they're having with reversal.
They're palpable.
Reversal.
I mean, I understand what you're saying. You've made it very simple and clear that if you force oxygen into the brain, that there will be growth.
Absolutely. Well, that's the key to any type of PTSD is caused by a trigger point in the cellular memory of the body.
Okay.
So what happens is, let's say a soldier killed a young child, and then he sees sees a child that resembles that child,
Right.
then he goes off, is like
Right.
a hot button.
Right.
So what happens is we have this treatment now that can reset the brain, if you will, and help to reverse through the oxygen, because oxygen is life.
It
You know,
is.
when we die, guess what we lose, right?
Oxygen,
You
right.
have to have
It
oxygen.
sounds
to live.
almost similar to, and this is not pejorative, electroshock therapy, in that you would never expect something like this to work. Obviously, it's a completely different treatment, but where you're resetting. I mean,
Yes.
it's a resetting of the brain.
Absolutely. And you know, with these soldiers coming back, Brad, when some of them are on up to 23 medications a day.
it's just-
And the side effect of these medications is causing more of the suicides than the actual injury
It can,
itself.
yeah.
So that's the problem. Now, Israel just finished their study,
Mm-hmm.
and now they have proven that H-spot, they call it H-spot,
Is-
HBOT, is
That's
now,
hyperbaric.
It's hyperbaric oxygen therapy is now working and is proven to work for traumatic brain injury.
Now, here's the challenge, though. There are studies out there which suggest that it can work for the various ailments we discussed, but it's expensive. And
Good point.
And what you are looking to do is try to have it more accepted, and therefore allow for insurance to cover it,
Yes.
Veterans Administration,
Yes.
whomever would be the appropriate authority.
Right
Talk
now,
to us about
right
that.
now, the VA is stepping back a little bit and just kind of watching what's going on. But the good news is there's enough studies and there's enough documentation data done by the Capstone Treat Now Coalition, headed up by Mr. Robert Beckman, PhD, and the Honorable Marty Hoffman, the former Secretary of the Army, are the two that are spearheading this coalition. We have 23 clinics in the country right now that are treating soldiers and veterans almost on a pro bono basis.
Oh, well, that's good news.
Yes, and they're looking forward to get like 130 is their goal all through the country so that we can start treating them as soon as they get back. But we've seen results as much as up to over 40% increase in positive emotional status, even after 1 to 5 years of injury. To be able to reverse that at 1 to 5 years is really a miracle. So,
You are holding a couple of events coming up.
Yes.
One of them is on February 23rd. Our interview may air before or after that,
Yes.
but the good news is you'll have another one in October.
Yes.
Talk to us about the February 23rd event.
absolutely. It's called GTN's Nexus Welltainment, where wellness meets entertainment. And basically, because my background as an acrobat and a performer,
Shocking.
I know I know the power of music and Broadway and theater. So it was hard to get this word out. So I thought, what about if we created a show?
Right.
But we have about 20 people in our cast. We have a 10-piece band.
And
we
the
have
show is
fire.
where?
It's at the Riverside Auditorium and Event Center
Which is
in
wonderful.
Riverside, California.
Right.
So we have fire spinners, silk aerialists, kind of like a Cirque feel with a little bit of Broadway, but the whole show was written to bring the facts to the people, to honor America, to honor the Rose of Love tribute, bringing
Tell
love.
us about the Rose of Love
love
tribute.
And well, this rose represents love, and so we've launched it as a Rose of Love tribute to literally bring the love and patriotism back to this nation. That is really, really needed right now.
Although it's interesting, I do feel as if, especially since 9/11, that there's an increased respect.
There is.
Do you agree?
But we can't forget. We
No,
can't.
that's
you know,
fair.
every time we turn the TV on, there's mental illness, there's shootings in
Because
schools.
I'm old enough to remember the Vietnam War era, and I did wear one of those MIA bracelets.
Yes.
I remember people kind of glaring at me, thinking, you know, why are you doing that? I don't feel like we have that now.
I'm so glad you said that, because we are actually, I've been living in Las Vegas, but I'm
Right.
here now, staying here, to get the Vietnam Memorial built, working with the Riverside National Cemetery Support Committee
And
with Paul
that's
Atkins.
and that's what you're looking toward for your October event, am I right?
Exactly. We're doing a bikers run on the 23rd. Then we'll be doing
Of
another
October.
of October.
Right.
February 23rd.
Oh no, February 23rd is the bikers run.
Yes, and then we're coming back October 11th
Got
to
it.
see if we can finish getting. And the mayor's behind. Mayor Bailey
Right,
is
sure.
behind
Rusty
this.
Bailey, the mayor of Riverside.
Forever Dreams for Veterans. It's Forever Dreams for Veterans Day, February 23rd of this year. So we want to honor our military. We want to honor our soldiers. We want to honor each other.
How can we learn more about the organization?
They can go to our website,
Which
Brad,
is?
at Forever Dreams for Veterans, all spelled out,
Right.
.com, or Nexus Forever Dreams,
Right.
because we want to create many, many shows with the challenges facing America.
Her name is Janet Franco. She is a tireless advocate for the
Yes, I
veterans
am.
of America. My name is Brad Pomerance. This is Charter California Edition.